Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast. I'm your host, Dave Dale. I'm doing a solo interview with Deputy Mayor Maggie Horsfield. She's halfway through her first term in office, and we get to talk about the budget deliberations that are coming up. We talk about her experience so far and how she's feeling about being an elected official, and whether or not she'll be running for mayor or for council again when she's coming out of it after the next 2 years for the election. I guess that'd be in 2026. But before we get to that, I'd like to give some space for our title sponsor, Source for Sports.
Sports aren't just what we do, they're who we are. Source for Sports North Bay is your advocate, your local support system, and your biggest fan. 1321 Fisher Street has grown from a place where knowledgeable experts can help you find exactly the gear you need, to the hotbed of team uniforms, apparel and fanwear, to a community stronghold for all the things that truly matter to you and your family's sports journey. We love helping you find your first pair of skates, as much as we relish supporting local leagues, teams, and athletes. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way.
Our co-host Scott is not here with us today, but we have the Deputy Mayor, Maggie Horsfield, here to talk about the budget.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Always a pleasure.
Well, it's great to have you back. So the budget process is somewhat an evolving thing regarding the timing council does it. Where are you guys at and where you want to finish your budget process?
So with the budget process, we've stuck to the timeline that it typically is after an election. So usually when there's an election, the budget process gets pushed back so that the incoming council has time to get their feet under them. And then last year, same thing. We started to implement some changes in how we were pulling the budget together. So it was pushed back as well to be in the first quarter of that year. And then this year, just with the amount of work that's been on the table with the operational review and other projects, staff came to me pretty early on and said, listen, I think if we want to put together a good budget that is structured and has the most information and time spent on it, let's go with the delayed timeline. And so in January, we're going to be looking at the water and wastewater budget. And then that way, that one dictates your water bill. And then come February, March, we're going to be working on the operating and the capital budgets.
The motivation before, from what I remember when I was covering council, to get it done early was so that you could tender earlier in the construction process. So is that impacted by pushing it back?
It does impact it to a certain extent, but because we look at our capital budget over a 10-year plan and we have an idea of what projects are going to be worked on in the following years, we do provide the staff with the opportunity to get some projects going that we know will be happening so that we don't have those delays. But with the March timeline for the final approval of the budget, we should still be on track.
Now, I know one of the projects that was needing finalization and approval that would impact the budget was the approval of the community center, Twin Pad. And I saw you there for the opening.
Yes.
That was nice to get done as far as moving forward and green lighted.
Yes, it was. It was a long time coming. It's something that it's been under discussion for, I think Mike Penner said 17 years, kind of puts it into perspective of how long we've been talking about it. And so to finally actually get the shovels in the ground and throw that dirt and start to see things happening, I'm quite excited.
Yeah, I remember there was discussions like 5 years before the council actually put a committee in together and actually started looking at it seriously, somewhere around 2012, I think. So yes, it has been a long time coming. What are the impacts of that decision on next year's budget and tax increases?
So with the community center, because we actually have been planning for it for so many years, the staff at the city have been setting aside funds and coming up with that financial plan so that in the year that we actually got the work going, we can start to forecast out and we're not trying to, have that massive impact on 1 year.
So they were already taxed for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also just setting aside some of those funding that we would get for the gas tax and putting parts of it away, knowing that that would go towards those projects as well. Looking at the funding from OLG, from the casino revenue, from the MAT tax, and just kind of putting together that plan. But once work starts to happen, that's when we're going to start to see money be drawn from that pot that's been grown. And then at the end of the project is when the debt will be issued on the remaining amount.
I think our conversation with Gary, he indicated that when that happens, the impact is like 250,000, 200. I can't remember the number yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back to that. But it's built in every year that within the budget that we pay off the debt, the principal on our debt.
Yeah.
And so that's calculated annually with our budgets. So depending on where it's at, it also depends too on how much other debt we issue.
Right.
Since this is going to be the focus of issuing debt is on this community center, the staff will also propose not using debt on other projects so that it's not going to be a massive increase.
What do you know that is coming up for this 2025 budget that is going to be debated?
Lots. No, so far I've had the opportunity to meet with staff and our service partners. So those are the ABCs, DSAB, the police service, the library, the Capitol Center, to hear what pressures they're seeing, because our service partners make up almost half of the city budget. So depending on what they come in at, it leaves very little wiggle room for the actual city of North Bay budget to have increases if we want to try and keep our tax levy at a certain amount. So this year when we met with our service partners, they're seeing pressures. There's been a lot of contract collective bargaining negotiations that they've had to work in. Insurance seems to really continue to grow. Benefit costs have gone up. The cost of doing business, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. So when we see those costs increase, just to continue the operations at the level they're at, it's tough to then go, okay, well, how can we make sure that the city budget reflects the percentage increase that we want to see when all of our service partners are coming in at a certain level? So it's going to be a bit of a balancing act. With the service level changes, so far I've heard from a few counselors that are interested in seeing more recreational programming, more around the community safety and well-being, more around providing that notion of security and safety that our community has highlighted that they want to see more investment in. There's been some questions about transit and just seeing the ridership go up. Are we servicing our folks the best? Should there be different routes? How is dynamic dispatch working or not working? And more questions like that.
Yeah, that is tough when your service providers make up 50% of your budget, and their budgets are like yours, where the city's salaries and pensions and benefits take up 85, 90?
Yeah, anywhere between 60 to 90% of budgets usually are just the human resource
Cost.
aspect of it.
So, there's never been a whole lot of wiggle room. I think mostly in budget time, people are wanting to know about new adds and subtractions, if any. And there hasn't been a lot of subtractions. Like, what are some of the things where you save money? Like, stop spending money in a certain way. Like, is there any worthwhile things to mention there?
There's not as many as we think, because once we get to the table and we have those discussions on, well, we could kind of claw back on this area. Around the budget table is all the counselors. And, there's always at least someone that can say, well, actually, this is something that means a lot to people. And so you might come to the table being like, yeah, let's cut this. We don't need it. And then someone brings up a really good point. So there hasn't been as much, but that's always kind of that perennial question of, well, where would we cut? I don't use transit. I have a vehicle. So for me, should I say no to transit? But then I have to think about all the people in the community that would impact. So there's always that balance game of the people that are for and against. It's the argument can really be argued on both sides.
I guess one of the an example of where you enhance budgets due to public desire is like more policing presence at the waterfront was talked about at one point not too long ago, and then that adds to it of anything that you do with. I'm just thinking of there was another really good example of the need for added cost to deal with something. And it was nuanced in fact that I think, well, it wasn't when you guys took over the landfill, but that is an interesting topic. But a lot of that is to make sure you save and compact enough so that you can extend the life, which saves money down the road another way. So control costs. So if you want to control costs for a desire, like an end goal, sometimes that costs money up front.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't look good.
Yeah, and that's part of the budgeting process is because we have this outlook that extends 10 years and we know there's things down the hopper in 20 to 30 years. That's what staff is focused on. Whereas sometimes as counselors, we're looking at a 4-year term because that's where we can have any sort of influence or opportunity to change things. And so when you kind of look at the budget and you go, well, why are we setting money aside here? Because it's not happening in the next 3 years, and those are the years that might matter to that person. If we set aside knowing that in 10 years we have a project that's going to cost X amount of dollars, and we slowly set aside a savings towards it in that year that project happens, it's not a massive hit.
Yeah, and that's what you're trying to avoid.
Exactly.
The peaks and the valleys.
Yeah.
Ski hill.
Mm-hmm.
What's the latest on that? Because it seems like there's talk about the city possibly taking it over.
Yeah, so with the ski hill, it's from all that I'm learning about it, with the Conservation Authority having their new legislation that they have to follow, and the structure of how they're assigning their responsibilities, the ski hill doesn't fall into that. And so then the question becomes, is the ski hill an asset to our community and to the city? And so if yes, okay, how do we make sure it keeps happening? And I've spoken to folks about the history of the ski hill back when it was Jack Pine and it was privately owned and the benefits to that, but also not so benefits when we had to save the ski hill. And so it's the balance of, is it an asset for our community? What's the cost to maintain it? And getting that information is going to be helpful in knowing how we can move forward.
Have you got that information? I know that Tanya was trying to get it and she hasn't been getting it. And what do you know about that?
So after it came to council to clarify some information that we had previously approved in the springtime and we just had to clarify in the summer, and that kind of brought it back up again, I called the chair of the ski hill and just said, hey, can you explain to me kind of what's going on and, sit down and show me this information, and had no issue going to get that information and, finding out where they're at in this whole process. But there's a lot of negotiations going on right now between the Conservation Authority, the city staff, to understand how they can work on getting an agreement together that would, meet the needs and wants of both organizations before it can be presented to council. So those negotiations are still happening. As far as I'm aware, I'm thinking that it's going to be coming at the budget time, whether it's a separate item or a part of the actual budget deliberations. I'm not sure yet.
Let's talk about, of course, every time you approve a $63 million project, people are saying, I don't even like my taxes now. So what do you, and I hear there's an MPAC assessment coming. Can you explain to how how we sit as far as our taxes in comparison to some others, even if you don't have up to date. But what happens when there's a reassessment and somebody's home gets valued at 30% more? Does that indicate more taxes automatically, or I know it doesn't. But
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's so
depends on how you carve up the pie. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So at the end of the day, there's an amount of money that we need to collect for our budget, for our taxes, to pay for the services we offer. And so how that's carved out, there's part that's residential, commercial, industrial, multi-res, and when things get reevaluated, it changes the amount of that pie that would pay for it. So with the 2017 tax assessment for MPAC, we haven't had any reevaluations done on a big scale for homes. So right now, if you do renovations on your home, you'll get flagged, you'll have a reassessment done, but there hasn't been a full kind of sector reassessment. So that could have massive impacts on some folks that their home might be evaluated too low or too high right now. So you could see savings. You also could see higher impact on how that pie is divided up. So then it's interesting because when you see $62 million project, 63 roughly, it's kind of like, wow, is that going to be an impact in 2025, or how is that divided up? And so it's the layered then of that pie of that budget and how much of it comes from other levels of government and other sources, and then how it's broken down, that money we've set aside ahead of time, because our goal is always to try and maintain a smooth of an increase if there has to be one. When it comes to comparing us to other municipalities, when I'm looking in the news to see, for me, I look at the Sioux and Sudbury and some other northern municipalities. Then I also look at lake-sized ones like Peterborough. Where we've come in at, it's pretty middle ground compared to those other municipalities. And then when I look at the challenges that we have being a northern community and getting different funding sources, the size that we are versus the services we offer, that plays into how our operating dollars and our capital dollars go towards. So we're in a good position, as much as folks don't want to see their taxes increase or feel they pay too much. I can tell you that everyone feels that way about their taxes.
Well, even out in East Ferris, where I live, you do notice the tax increases, and you kind of look at I wouldn't want to make people jealous, but my taxes are like $2,500.
Okay,
yeah. But it's for a 960 square foot home on a highway, right? I have my own septic, I have my own water. Both of those things age out. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at replacing either of those things, you're looking at $30,000 each, right? So I try to explain to people, I said, yeah, I'm not paying now, but I should be paying into a pot for later because I'm going to need it. Otherwise, I'll have to remortgage the house, kind of thing. That's the reality. Plus, when you move out of the city to escape taxation, you're adding costs. Your wear and tear on your car. You're paying more for your insurance, actually, because I'm further from a fire hydrant. Mm-hmm. Gas, time, like you add up all those things and really it starts to equate a little bit.
It's spent differently.
Yeah.
And there's no transit. There are certain elements that paying for community and supporting community is different. And so whereas we have a larger population here in different neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods all have parks, you might only have a few in East Ferris, and they might not be within walking distance. There's no sidewalks. There's all those nuances when it comes to kind of comparing, where it can't be apples to apples. There's always those, well, yeah, sure, exactly as you said, like your taxes might be a bit less, but there's also those other costs that are associated.
They're built into the house, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
You just don't, I know people pay separately for the water sewer here as well, but they usually add in the property taxes in their bills as one when they're talking about them still. So it's sort of a thing. Plus, when people say, well, they don't pay hardly anything in Toronto for property tax, but would you want to live in Toronto? Right, that's the thing. That's a long commute.
Yeah. And do you want to have someone living above you, and the access to green space
it's a
and
lifestyle
everything.
You're paying
Exactly.
For.
Yeah.
And when you compare, living in Sudbury, right? I don't think it compares to living in North Bay at all. Sault Ste. Marie, I like Sault Ste. Marie. I have family there. But it's a different place to live than it is in North Bay. So you're making your choices there.
Yeah.
I think the Soo compares a little bit more closely to North Bay as far as its amenities to the wilderness.
Yeah. Right. I traveled quite a bit in an earlier job I was in, and I did find, there were certain places like Sault Ste. Marie and some of the communities just outside of Ottawa that I found felt more like North Bay than others that I thought about. But the Soo, I think, would be kind of our closest sister city feeling in a way.
Yeah, personality-wise too, right? A little bit. They're a little bit more redneck, I think. A little bit less
you said it, not
service.
me.
Well, not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So you're 2 years in to your first term, and you got vaulted up to deputy mayor. How's it going?
It's going really well. It's often a question I get from people in the community. So, are you enjoying it? Is this what you were expecting? And I don't think that you can really expect what it is until you're really in it. But I am really enjoying it. There are definitely tough days, tough decisions, a lot of work that has to go on, a lot of learning and reading and engaging. But at the end of the day, I always come home from meetings really kind of amped up and invigorated by those interactions, and it's something that I really enjoy.
Well, let's just take a quick coffee break, and let's go on over to Twigs Coffee Roasters, one of the Echo Essentials podcast supporters and sponsors. And I haven't been there for a little while. I've been going through the drive-through, but I want to go in there and talk to the guys that meet every morning, and they think they know everything, and I'm going to see how much they know and what they want to tell me. I'll get some good stories there. There's a lot of gossip going on in Twigs, and that's the place to find things out, because that's the place to drink coffee and have some good, scrumptious baked goods. They offer a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. There's 5 locations to serve you, from North Bay to Sturgeon Falls to Sudbury. And Twigs offers an espresso bar, gourmet deli, and irresistible fresh baked goods, including gluten-free options, which is good for my mom because she solved a lot of her health issues. She had a lot of pain in the back, a lot of problems with her, and then she switched over to gluten-free. And Bob's your uncle. She's a lot healthier and happy she did it. So check that out. You can order online for pickup at twigs.ca, and coming soon you'll be able to order fresh roasted coffee beans direct to your doorstep from our distribution center in North Bay. So thank you, Twigs Coffee Roasters.
It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota. Attention truck lovers. Have you been Tundra struck? The powerful and dependable Toyota Tundra is the new definition of grit. Ask us about amazing lease deals on a 2025 Tundra Double Cap SR 4-wheel drive, and experience ingenious levels of capability, technology, and refinement. Or maybe you're an SUV lover? Take advantage of a limited shipment of 2025 RAV4s and discover the perfect blend of style, comfort, and efficiency in a compact SUV that ignites your desire to explore. Right now, get excellent lease deals on the Toyota RAV4 LE all-wheel drive and more. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota, 640 McEwen, or online at northbaytoyota.com for details.
The first year was tough because you're involved with an internal sort of thing with Sarah Inch, investigation and his conduct. And even at one point, you guys weren't sitting beside each other, and now it seems like a little bit more of a working relationship. How's that?
It's going well. It was a difficult time, and it definitely put a lot of stress on trying to work cohesively. But I do think that once everything was settled, with the length of time it all took as well, that it is possible to move forward and to move on and to find ways to work together. And I think that's one of the elements of being in politics or in any type of organization too, and working, is that you're not going to agree on everything with folks, but being able to find ways to agree to disagree, to come together, to think about the greater good and what you're actually trying to accomplish, and putting aside everything else, you can get things done. Well,
that's how I've been living my life in the business I'm in. It's very much a matter of, and this is one of the things I do like about North Bay, by and large, majority. You can butt heads with people and still come back together and work together, or get along, or tolerate, right? Mm-hmm. It's that type of community where there's long-standing family feuds in this community, where some members can never talk to each other, but most get over it, mm-hmm. right? And just get along, to move along. Yeah, so that's an aspect, I think, of good communities. I've seen your newsletter.
Yes, yes, I have a newsletter.
Looks like you're campaigning for re-election.
When I heard you say that on the podcast, I kind of went, "What do you mean?" And then I started doing the math, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I guess this is what it can be perceived as." But it actually, I started working on the idea of a newsletter several months ago, just because one of my areas of wanting to make a difference as a counselor was in the communication piece. And that's still one of the things I hear from folks is, "Oh, I didn't know this was happening," or, "No one told me this. Where was that posted?" And trying to figure out, well, how can I help be that information disseminator? Because we know there's so much information out there. There's so much happening at the city and in the community. And I'll go on social media and I'll post on Instagram and Facebook, a bit of X, a bit of LinkedIn. But I wasn't seeing the engagement that I thought I would. Or not everyone I know that wants that information is on those platforms. And so then I looked at other ways. And, I see the Chamber newsletter, I see the Echo newsletter, and I thought to myself, is that possible? What would that look like? Would I be overcommitting if I don't want to guarantee that every day or every week there's going to be one, because I recognize that's quite a bit. It's a full-time job. But what happens if after a council meeting or after something significant, I could summarize it and put it out there as my interpretation? And then that way too, when people go, "Well, what did you think of this issue?" I can kind of point to, here's what I said. Mm-hmm. And then it's also kind of captured in time. I think
your newsletter is excellent.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And I know how hard they are to do. And it's a big commitment. And you're not just given previously said, what's a good word for it? It's not just platitudes. You actually given your opinion a little bit.
Yeah.
You're describing things from your perspective, which, genuine is a currency. And it's very valuable. So if you make the investment in telling people how you truly feel, mm-hmm. You're going to get the rewards from that. So I think it's off to a good start.
Thank you.
And I think every counselor should have their own newsletter.
Yeah.
To state where they're at and their position and what they'd like to know, or like the important parts of it. They in this day and age, I think every counselor should have really, and I think you can overdo it.
Yeah,
you can overdo it, and you can become very much more opinion than substance as far as background and information that's usable. I think one of the previous Councillors Robertson really set the bar high in that regard.
Yes.
Like he was doing Facebook.
And that's where, I thought to him, because I would watch those.
Yeah.
And he was someone that I really respected in how he was trying to communicate and then also hear from people. And I thought, do I want to do lives? Would that be? And then I thought to myself, I don't know if, I already do social media stuff. Let's maybe try something else that's separate. I thought about a blog, but then I'm like, that's a lot of words. And I don't know if people really want to just read, pages of information. So how can I be concise, but also get out, my thoughts too?
So are you thinking about running for mayor?
Another great question. No, I would say after I was elected in 2022, that was the first question some people would ask me is, so you're running for mayor next? And I'm like, I haven't even, been sworn in as a councillor. I have no idea what I'm really getting into. It's something that, I kind of think about some days. There's some days where I go, my God, imagine if I didn't run for council, how much free time I would have, or I could just sit back and read these things and not think, oh God, I played a role in this, or, people are going to come at me because of this. I could kind of go back into the forest and, live out a quiet life.
You got a young family.
Exactly. Yeah. I could have, more kids. I could, do other things. But then I also just really enjoy the process. So at this time, I don't have any intentions to run for mayor. I think I'm definitely interested in running for council again. But just knowing that I don't know where I could be in a year or two from now to make sure that I can fully commit today to that decision. But I enjoy it. And I do think that, one term, you really get your feet wet and you really start to understand the process. But 2 terms would probably give me a lot more of a deeper understanding of how it works.
I like the idea. I like what you're saying there, because I believe that people, when they do run for council, they should consider a 2-term plan, because the payoff and the learning curve is in the second term for sure. The 4th year of your first term is just campaigning, and not a whole lot smart things happen, I don't think. But so that's when the payoff to the community comes in that second term. So that's good. I wouldn't have run for council if I thought it was just going to be one term myself, because even after covering council and talking about it for 20 years almost, I would know that it would take a while to actually become a good counselor.
Yeah, and
right?
to see the change that, you want to see in the community. One of my comparisons when people ask me is, I really want things to move faster, but also there's nuances, there's things we have to consider, and a lot of things take time. And it would be really great if we could get things moving a lot quicker, like a 17-year arena project, how long those things can really take. And so wanting to see change, it's committing to 2 terms. I think over an 8-year period, we would see much more change in what you were looking for than just a 4-year term.
What change are you looking to make?
So I think, I spent a lot of time at the beginning, especially getting to know the staff and understanding the functions. Because it's really easy to say, you should be doing this instead. Here's a really great idea. And I think that the communication piece is so important, because a lot of times where things go sideways is the communication. And it's not to say that there's not a lack of trying or that anyone's doing a bad job as capacity. It's figuring out where people are at to be able to communicate with them. And so I think that the piece that would maybe solve a lot of headaches is that communication piece, and just figuring out how, as an entire organization, the idea of communication isn't on top of everyone's mind. So if we're doing, working on something, how should we be communicating this? Can we be communicating it differently? Should it be a news release? Should it be a social media post? Should it be a letter in everyone's mailbox? How are we getting that message out there so that the community feels like they're in the know?
All of the above.
Or all the above, exactly.
It's such a fractured communication market out there. My experience...
And it's changed significantly.
It's evolving by the day. So reaching people in the pockets that they're in is very difficult because, you mentioned a number of different platforms. Have you tried Blue Sky yet? Right?
Someone mentioned Blue Sky, and I'm like, are you serious? There's another one I have to think about trying to figure out, and yeah.
I'm trying, my hardest to reduce the number of platforms and trying to consolidate, but it's impossible. I've been staying away from Instagram because I just believe it's an addictive sort of...
Get into the doom scroll.
The doom scroll, and you really don't... I don't think you get enough interaction to justify that you have to be on it as well, and you're losing time. Mm-hmm. So you're investing a lot of time on there, and I got ADHD for sure, because I just, like, squirrel. My life is... my entire life is like that. So Instagram is like evil as far as I'm concerned. The reels on Facebook are bad enough. At least then I can eventually get tired of it.
Get unhooked from them.
I think I'm learning things.
Yep.
You fool yourself into thinking that this is important.
And then it just keeps showing you, oh, he stayed on this video.
Yeah.
Let's keep showing him more videos like this. And they've hooked you.
And going into the budget stuff, what's coming up in January?
So I think my message would be that, yes, we're entering the budget process. When we get to it in March, a lot of that's already, a lot of that work that's been done on the budget's been done ahead of time. So if folks in the community have any ideas, feedback, things they want us to consider for 2025, now's the best time for us to hear about it so that we can actually work with staff on coming together to come up with an actual idea of what that, that ask would be, that service level change would be. Because once we get into the deliberations of, are we doing this, are we doing that, are we not, to then ask them at that point, hey, can you throw together a quick quote on this amount, doesn't give them the ability to actually think it through and come up with something that's, well thought out. So if there's any suggestions, questions like that, now's the time for us to hear about it.
Is there a date where it's too late?
It's never too late, but I would say that come January, I think on one of our forms we ask, by mid-January, if you could kind of have a soft deadline of try and get your ideas in. But we never stop hearing from the community about things they wish to see. So,
well, that's good. It's been good talking to you.
Yeah, you too, Dave.
I hope you have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
I'm not much of a ho-ho-hoer, but I'm a big Happy New Year.
Yes.
Have a good year. I think 2025 is going to be huge for a number of reasons other than not just the city's 100th birthday. It just seems like that's going to be a very challenging year with some provincial and federal elections back to back.
A new presidency in the States starting up.
Some world disorder or order, depending on your hopefulness.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big year, but I'm looking forward to it as an exciting year for sure.
No, I agree. I think the 100th anniversary, it's going to kind of rejuvenate the community a bit.
You might bring them together a little bit.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great things happening with different programming. And I think the 100th anniversary year is going to really heighten those activities and I think bring people together.
You've been listening to the Echo Essentials podcast. My name is Dave Dale. We've been talking to Deputy Mayor Maggie Horsfield. And we hope that you like, comment, and share, and check out her newsletter. And I hope all the councillors try something similar, even if it's on a quarterly basis. It's good to be able to hold them account for the words that they type and send around.